Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and this episode is once again brought to you by our good friends at Rhythm. Rhythm is the number one tool in the business for helping you bet with a little bit of that AI help that is always in the news. The biggest thing here for me is that Rhythm helps me build models. It helps me give real projections to my analysis and to my picks. The biggest thing is I don't need to know all the back end math. I can just say, I like this stat. I think offensive rebound is important. I think that pace is important. I think 3-point percentage is important. Put those things in the blender. Rhythm helps me create a model and it tracks it on the back end to let me know just how profitable it is. And you can get it for a week for free with the link in the bio right here. Use Rhythm to help you on a daily basis with not only the NBA, but hockey, but college basketball in particular. That's the biggest one. There's so many teams, you can't keep track of all of them, and you have it just at your fingertips in the app right in your phone. So you can get it again for a week for free right here. I want to touch on this episode a little bit. We're going to obviously dive into the Wednesday slate, not the best slate. And you can listen to some of my analysis on buckets that I recorded with Michael Fiddle for the Action Network. But I wanted to give first reactions to some of the things that happened in the NBA Cup. I'll do that after the best bets for the Wednesday slate. I was actually not going to record this episode today. I was going to wait because I was like, I'm a little tired, like whatever. And then Brandon's like, you should do it. Like it would be great. It'd be super valuable. There's no lines right now. And I was like, true. I guess you're right. Like, fuck you. Like now I'm awake. So I'm tired, but we're powering through a little bit for you guys right now. So that way this episode comes out to you. And honestly, like you're probably going to have the advice before the lines even are out. So maybe the book's going to set it off of my stuff. Maybe they're not, but who knows? But we're going to talk about it. So for the for the Wednesday slate, I did want to touch on a couple things. It's a pretty thin slate, honestly. Only only 6 games, a lot of back-to-backs. I wrote the game guide for the Lakers versus the Heat and for the Action Network, so that should be coming to you sometime this morning. But I'm on Miami in that spot. I think that as long as Jimmy's playing, which I think he will, he missed the last game against Boston, but the biggest thing to me is that Miami takes a lot more threes, and having that 3-point variance is probably going to help you against this Lakers team. And then Miami is good in transition when they get in transition, but they don't get into transition that often. It's a pretty low frequency. The Lakers, on the other hand, are the worst team in transition in the NBA. I feel like that's something that Spo is going to know, like, hey, like, let's just attack this. It's an easy way. We just pick up the pace a little bit. So I like Miami in this spot. The other thing is LeBron, when he's played in Miami since he left there in whatever it was, 2014, 9 games, averaging about 30 points a game. Biggest thing to me is he's averaging about 4.6 turnovers per game. So I'm going to be looking for over 3.5, over 4.5 turnovers. 3.5, I'd imagine, might be a little juiced. 4.5, probably plus money. I'm going to want either of those spots. He's only got so many more opportunities in Miami. And the biggest thing is when he plays there, like he always kind of gets up to play in Miami, gets up to play in Cleveland whenever he goes back there. He turns the ball over. That's what he does. And it's okay. It's something that the Lakers are okay with. They're accepting of it. It's fine. It's just the cost of doing business. And you know that LeBron's going to probably try to force a couple passes here and there, maybe an offensive foul, maybe, like a bad pass anyway. Or just like any other turnover opportunity. So 3.5 is definitely a play, and 4.5 if it's at plus money, I would also be interested. Then we're looking at the Pacers versus the Nets. I'm a little surprised that this line is only -2. I think that the Pacers are in a great spot, even though it's a back-to-back. And Tyrese Halliburton has had significant road struggles this season. He's only averaging about 11 points per game on the road. Granted, he scored 30 points tonight or last night. It's back-to-back. It's against the Brooklyn Nets. I think they might have like slightly different options that you could throw at him, especially with it looks like Ben Simmons is going to play. So I'd be interested maybe in seeing if there's an overreaction to the good game and seeing if there's a way to grab like some unders for Halliburton, specifically the points. But overall, Indiana should win this game. The Nets have an injury report that's a literal mile long. It is like the entire team is on the report. So it's a bad spot for the Nets, even though situationally it would be a good spot, but just based on all the injuries that they have, it's going to make it very, very difficult for them to really put up like a real fighting opportunity here. And as good as they've been, it just makes it a little bit more difficult when you're running through really like the dregs of a rotation that's already pretty bad. I will say Nick Claxton has looked pretty good. And normally this is a matchup that I would want him in a matchup against the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers have been bleeding points to centers. His minutes have not really correlated with the way that you would think. Like, they have a ton of injuries, and you still aren't seeing Claxton get like a real uptick in minutes. You're seeing them kind of go further down the rotation. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're like, hey, Cooper Flag time. Like, maybe now's the time to tank. And as a result of that, I don't want to bet an under in this matchup because I think it's a good matchup for the Pacers, but there is some other opportunity further down the roster. So like Trenton Watford has been pretty good for us before. We've bet on him in different seasons. I'm curious to see if we get a prop for him. I think it would be a good opportunity here against this Pacers team. Like I said, that kind of bleeds points to the center position. So maybe a little bit off the bench, probably still sees like 20, 22 minutes. I think it could be a pretty strong opportunity for Trenton Watford. Looking at the Magic versus the 76ers, Magic 2-point favorites on the road. Both of these teams on a back-to-back. The Magic just got shellacked by the New York Knicks. And I'm a little surprised by the line. I think this is a Magic spot. I think it's a bounce back spot. I understand it's a young team. I understand that they just got like their asses handed to them. But this Philadelphia 76ers team, I wouldn't be super surprised to see them rest players, given that it's a back-to-back for them. And Orlando, they're playing a lot of games right now, but the defense has been so good and so staunch, especially at the point of attack. And that's kind of what Philadelphia is surviving on. It's, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, a little bit of Paul George. I think that this could be a little bit of a tougher situation for them. So I would be looking at Orlando in this spot. But Tazde didn't play for them against the Knicks due to a sprained ankle. We'll see if he plays against Philadelphia. And Joel Embiid did not play on Tuesday night, so yesterday either, due to the knee and personal reasons. So we'll see if he's on the report or not tomorrow or today, and that would maybe be the major reason to avoid playing Orlando. So I think it is probably a little bit of a wait and see spot. But if Embiid does play, I would be looking at him for maybe some points, maybe some first quarter points angles. We'll see where it kind of opens up, but they've been pretty soft with him, at like the 5.5 or 4.5 point range. And even though he's on a minutes limit, this is still a strong matchup for him in terms of being able to score on the interior, especially without, Batazde there. You're getting even further down the rotation. You're getting to like the Mo Wagners, et cetera. So that's probably a way to look at this, but we just have to see what Embiid's status is. If Paul George is going to play, there's a couple of different moving parts in that Magic versus 76ers game. The Celtics are 14.5 point favorites against the Detroit Pistons. Boston has listed a number of players on their injury report. Boston has specifically Drew Holiday with the knee is questionable. Jason Tatum is also questionable due to right patella tendinopathy. We'll see if these guys play. If Tatum plays, I feel like this might just be a way to get him a day off, like if he wants one, or like if they need to give him one. But Detroit's on a back-to-back. Boston should definitely take care of business. They should win this game. Tatum's been great against the Pistons, which is, kind of easy to say, right? But he's gone over the number at 25.5 points in 8 straight games against the Pistons. So I would definitely be looking for that. He's been a little bit more like inconsistent of late when he's had to play really with like a full lineup for them. with mainly with Jaylen Brown, who missed a little bit of time. But even then, he's averaging 27.6 points per game this season, even alongside of Jaylen Brown. So he's gone over the number in 9 of 16 games. I think this could be a pretty good spot to back Jason Tatum to go over. Also, though, I think really the best spot, if he does play, instead of the 25.5 points, if we can get a 6.5 points first quarter line, which is what I'm fetching right now. So I'm going to confirm, because this line to me, I think is just too low. So I'm going to take a look here, and you guys are going to bear with me while I do this, because in the event that this is the play, it's just far too low. So let's find out here real quick. So with Tatum in the first quarter, he's generally playing. Oh no, it's 8.5. Okay, so 8.5. He's generally playing the entire first quarter. He's playing a 12-minute rotation. And the reason that I bring this up is he didn't against Detroit earlier in the year, but he still scored 17 points in the first quarter. Just truly dominant first quarter performance from him against Detroit. On the season, though, even with Jaylen Brown, he's averaging 9.9 first quarter points per game. The biggest swing has really been lately, it's been a little bit more inconsistent. He started off the season red hot with Jaylen Brown, without Jaylen Brown, was just seeing like great usage in the first quarter. Even then, though, it's really been an issue over the past couple of games that he's struggled a little bit. Looking at his last 5 games, he's only hit this in 2 of 5 games. One game, his last game against Miami, still had 8 points. So still had like a pretty strong performance even then. But the main thing is that at the end of the first quarter rotation, it winds up being really just Tatum with the bench. And it's been a really good opportunity for him to rack up points late in the first quarter. So for me, against this Detroit team that really has struggled to defend him, and did struggle to defend him even earlier in the year when he scored 17 first quarter points and wound up scoring 37 over the course of the entire game, it is a pretty good opportunity to back Tatum early. I'm looking to see if maybe I can get a number that's not 8.5. I can get like a 7.5. I would prefer that. But we'll keep an eye on that line. I think it could be a good spot to maybe target Tatum early to avoid any like blowout risk later on in the game. For the next game we're looking at is the Hawks versus the Bucks. We're seeing this line move against Milwaukee. Milwaukee opened as a 4.5 point favorite. I'm seeing this as low as 3 right now. I'm seeing a couple 3s in the market. We have to see what Milwaukee does. They just played. It's a back-to-back. They know that they're going to have some cup games coming up next week. And I wonder if maybe they sit Dame, maybe they sit Giannis, maybe one of them takes a little bit of a rest on this back-to-back set. Whereas Atlanta has a little bit of a rest advantage. They played 2 days ago, had the day off. And even though they're on the road, Atlanta always seems to play Milwaukee pretty tough. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that during the regular season, you don't see teams like deviate from what their scheme is defensively. And you wind up seeing players and teams kind of run out their standard stacked sets. And it's been something that has been advantageous and exploitable for Atlanta against Milwaukee historically, just based on the fact that Trae Young really has kind of crushed drop coverage. So last year, when these two teams played in the most recent game, 32 points from Trae, 12 assists, and just took 28 shots, just a massive volume of shots. Has really been able to get to the rim and get his floater going, and it's been a great spot for Trae Young. I think that given the back-to-back, given the fact that we'll probably see if everybody stays healthy, if we see Giannis play, if we see Brook Lopez play, you're kind of going to see those same types of sets. So I'd be interested in maybe a Trae Young PA type of line, but I do think that it's entirely possible that one or both of, or maybe all 3 of Dame, Giannis, Brook Lopez maybe sit in this game given the back-to-back that they just had to go through and the stakes of the game that they had to play against the Detroit Pistons. Finally, we've got the Timberwolves versus the Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers on a back-to-back, Minnesota Timberwolves with the rest advantage. The spot for me here is Zubac over his rebounds. I'm imagining it's going to be 11.5. It's a number he's really been kind of blowing by this season. He's averaging 12.4 rebounds per game. In the one matchup he had against Rudy Gobert earlier this season, he had 13 rebounds in that spot as well. To me, the biggest thing is that because Gobert is like anchored in the paint because of what his offensive skill set is, it results in a situation where Zubac is able to be on the interior, clean up a lot of those easy rebounds, and he's going to have more rebounding opportunities, even though the guy opposite of him is a good rebounder. Gobert has not been the same this year in terms of racking up some of those counting stats. So I like Zubac in this game. I'm going to be grabbing over the rebounds. I'm guessing it's going to be 11.5. All right, so let's dive into the NBA Cup because our matchups are set right now. We've got the Magic at the Bucks, the Hawks at the Knicks, the Mavericks at the Thunder, and the Warriors at the Rockets. These games, from a scheduling perspective, will happen, some of them on Tuesday, December 10th, the other ones on Wednesday, December 11th. Then they will go to, so those are the quarterfinals. Then Saturday, December 14th will be the semifinals in Vegas. And then Tuesday, December 17th will be the finals also in Vegas. So it's going to be a pretty exciting tournament. Fascinated a little bit by the teams that made it. But it should be pretty good. I want to talk about what I think could be happening or where there's maybe a little bit of value here. So there's no odds out yet for they haven't reopened the odds yet since these games have ended. I would have this, I'm trying to think of numbers, but basically I'm just going to give you the order in terms of who I think should be favored. So I think that you're going to have the Knicks and the Bucks at the top with Oklahoma City. The reason I say that is that Oklahoma City is really the only team I think that has like an extremely tough game out the gate. I think the Dallas Mavericks to me should be the fourth ranked team in this just because you got Luka, and that's how good they are. And it's tough because that game is happening really like right away. You're getting that Mavericks versus Thunder game. It's tough though because I don't know if Dallas, because of that, should really be the 4 or if maybe they should be 5 just based on path. So I do think that Oklahoma City is the best team in the tournament right now. If you look at even like their advanced metrics, they are by far the best team left. Oklahoma City is a plus 8.7 in terms of net rating at dunks and threes, number 6 in offense, number 1 in defense, and the rebounding rate, which has been an issue for them, has really come up with Hartenstein coming along. So that's made a pretty big difference. Then when you look at the rest of the teams here, Dallas, I want to have ranked high. Dallas is 4th in adjusted net rating. Dallas is the next best team per dunks and threes in this chart. Then you have Houston, the Knicks, the Magic, the Warriors. So you actually almost have a scenario where the majority of these teams are at the top of these respective rankings in terms of the adjusted net ratings, some of the advanced metrics. The Bucks are one of the worst teams. However, the Bucks have really started to come along in terms of their defense has started to come along. They've played a lot better of late, and I think that recency does make a little bit of a difference. The Hawks are by far the worst team left. The Hawks have a negative adjusted net rating at minus 2.9. They're 21st in the NBA at dunks and threes. I think that they're drawing dead. I don't like the matchup for Orlando. I don't think that Orlando is going to be able to get through. I think we just saw, obviously, that was about as extreme an example as you could have in terms of what New York did to them in the matchup earlier today. However, the biggest thing with that is it kind of showed that Orlando struggles when they play teams that have that type of elite offense, top 10 offenses. if you look at this, the teams that are left, Milwaukee's 9, Oklahoma City is 6, Dallas is 4, New York is 2, Atlanta I don't expect to advance really, and the Rockets are the next worst. They're at 15, and Golden State is close. They're 11. So they've still been a pretty strong offense. They're number 8 overall in terms of adjusted net rating. So I think that's the way you could do it. The Houston Golden State game, I'm fascinated by, but I don't know if I like either of them matchup wise really moving forward too much. They play each other, which I think is interesting. Obviously, to start, that's one of the quarterfinal games, and Houston has been really, really good. They took it to the Knicks like earlier in the season. They've been, I think, a surprising team at 15-6. Then you have the issue with the Warriors, like Draymond Green. I think he probably could have played, but he's got some injury issues, like some maintenance things. They're allowed to sit him out for this game, even though it was a cup game, because it didn't really matter for Golden State. If he doesn't play, that really impacts my view of the Golden State Warriors. Understandably so. So I don't want to have them as high up in these types of rankings. But if you have a guy like Steph Curry, I think that it's reasonable to say that they should be like not towards the bottom of these standings. So to me, I think that Oklahoma City, New York, and Milwaukee are differently situated. I think Oklahoma City is the best team in the tournament, but I think they have the toughest first round matchup. New York has the easiest first round matchup in terms of adjusted net rating. So I think they have to be bumped up a tier. And then even if you look at the East overall, it just has teams that are not as good as what's in the West. The West has 2 of the top 4 teams in adjusted net rating. And even if you go down to Golden State, they're 8th. So you're looking much higher up in terms of all the teams in the West are top 8. It's 1, 4, 5, and 8 in terms of adjusted net rating. So the West is definitely more difficult. Whereas in the East, I think that this is really between the Knicks and the Bucks. And when we get down to it, the Knicks versus Bucks matchup, I think, is one that probably favors New York a little bit, just based on the churning of this offense that they have. I know that Giannis is probably the best player on the court. Giannis is arguably the best player on the court in like any of these remaining matchups. And that's even including obviously Luka, Shea, Brunson, obviously, but Brunson I think is a step down. Steph Curry. That's kind of what you're working with here. So that's what always will keep Milwaukee kind of in it as well. So when I'm looking at this and I'm trying to find some value, I'm trying to look at the situation and look at the board and say, where can I maybe find an angle? Where can I find a path? And to me, the path is that New York and the Bucks should get through to Vegas. They should be playing each other in the semifinals, head to head. I still think it's a decent matchup for the Knicks, and we have that 100-1 cat ticket to be the MVP. I still like it. I do think that there's maybe an opportunity to look at what the Brunson price is, look at what the Knicks to win price is, because if it aligns with Brunson, then maybe you could take the Knicks. But a lot of it is going to come down to how you feel about, I think, the Knicks versus the Bucks, because you have to, I don't want to say assume, because Atlanta's beat some really good teams so far to get here, but you have to almost assume that New York gets through that game against Atlanta. And you have to assume, I think, like somewhat fairly, that Milwaukee is able to take care of Orlando based on their offense and based on what we've kind of seen Orlando struggle with. I don't think they really have somebody with the right size to deal with a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that's a tough matchup for them. On the flip side, if you look at those teams against the Western Conference, I think they line up okay against a lot of them. Specifically, I would love to see an Oklahoma City versus New York final, because you see Hartenstein back. It's going to be a little bit of heartbreak, I think. But New York has so many wings. Oklahoma City relies on really the strength of their wings and the versatility of them. And then you have Cat, like the new center for the Knicks versus the old center for the Knicks. I think that it would be like a really fun and like kind of a cagey game with Shea, the way he's able to generate contact, the way Brunson's able to generate contact. I think that game would be a lot of fun. the problem with the Western Conference and why I kind of have to downgrade all the other teams, I think Oklahoma City they have been really the best team in the NBA so far this season. They're 16-5, and I know that record-wise that isn't number one, but every advanced metric points to them, and they were doing it for a decent chunk without Hartenstein, and then there was a point where they didn't have Hartenstein or Chet, and they were still kind of maintaining that. So I like what Oklahoma City can do from a versatility perspective, and I think Oklahoma City matches up pretty well with Houston and with Golden State. The toughest thing for them is honestly, I think that matchup against Dallas might be their toughest test out west. They've struggled with them before. Dallas beat them obviously in the playoffs last year. This might be their time where you have like the young and up and coming team. They are able to get past that team that knocked them out in the round prior, the year prior. So I'm fascinated by that matchup. It's definitely one that I want to watch. I will say that I think Oklahoma City's odds should probably align almost exactly with SGA's. As good as I think Jalen Williams is, I don't know if they would ever really give it to him in a scenario like this. It's not like with Dallas, where I think if Kyrie Irving goes crazy, that Kyrie Irving has a little bit more pedigree in terms of voters or voter appeal. Well, maybe not the appeal, but in terms of voters, in terms of recognizability, that they might go with him. For Houston, I have no idea. I would think it would be Şengün, but honestly, like if Jalen Green just goes crazy for 2 games, or 3 games, they might give it to him. They might give it to Dylan Brooks. Like, who knows? So I think for the Rockets, you have to just say, if I want to back the Rockets, I'm going to bet on the Rockets to just advance. If you're looking at Golden State, it's very, very difficult to get away from Steph Curry. The problem is that the odds are almost identical. And we ran into this issue before when Golden State had locked it up because they were already 3-0. The odds were the same. So there's no reason to, or like honestly, like even if it's like plus 50 difference or so, it's not worth tying your money up with just Steph Curry if you can bet on the team to win, if that's the angle that you want to do. I don't think that the NBA Cup will give an MVP to a player on a losing team. I know that it's something we've talked about with like in this tournament, like if there's somebody that's incredible because it's so much of a smaller sample size, maybe that's something that could happen. It hasn't really happened in the NBA Finals. When they do these awards votings, a lot of times it's really just the best player on the best team. And that's why I think it does get a little confusing when you look at a team like the New York Knicks, for example, because Brunson is considered obviously the leader of the team. Karl-Anthony Towns has had really, really strong performances against a lot of these teams that are left. And in the East, the 2 games that he's played, 1 game against the Hawks, 1 game against the Bucks, so far this season, scored over 30 points in both of those games. So I feel very good about our ticket there. And the odds for Brunson to be MVP and the Knicks to win, I don't think they should be 100% aligned. Whereas with like Golden State, I think they should be 100% aligned, but you may as well give yourself the extra out. For Dallas, like Luka's odds, I don't think should be 100% aligned with theirs because you have a guy like Kyrie Irving. So that's a spot where I would be saying, well, if Luka's odds are really low and they're in line with Dallas, then maybe there's a little bit of a buy opportunity there for a Kyrie Irving bet or a Kyrie Irving MVP ticket. So those are a couple of things that we're going to be looking at. If I had to pick 2 teams to face off in the finals, I would pick the Knicks and the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think that is the most likely scenario. And it feels a little bit chalky and kind of anything can happen in these NBA Cup games. It's a 1-game situation. It's a knockout round. You lose, you're out, whatever. I think that the offensive upside that the Knicks have is going to really help them in this Eastern Conference, because even if, let's say, the Magic are able to upset the Milwaukee Bucks, I think it's going to be tough, especially after the beating that New York just gave to them. And there's a little bit of a blueprint on like what you need to do. I think that's going to be a little bit tough for them. And then honestly, like if Paolo were to come back at some point during these games, how does that impact the team? Does that mess up their timing? Does that mess up their flow? Does that upset some of the chemistry that they've really been able to build in the time that he's out? Not that he's a bad player, but just that it changes things that you've been doing, and it can make things maybe slip up just a tiny bit. So I'm really excited for these games. We're going to obviously have some more previews out for you, and we're going to have some more thoughts on it. But I did want to kind of give some of my initial thoughts, some of the things that I think, like where the pricing should be. I would have, out of these games, I would have the Bucks and the Knicks advancing to the semifinals. So the Bucks beating the Magic, the Knicks beating the Hawks. I have Oklahoma City over Dallas. I think that it's not unreasonable to have Houston over Golden State. I think that Houston is going to be underpriced because they're young and because Golden State's Golden State. But I do think that there's going to be some opportunity to bet on Houston in that first game. And then I think Oklahoma City will get through, and I think the Knicks can beat the Bucks. So we're sitting on some good tickets. If you've been following us, obviously in the huddle, we have Oklahoma City at 13-1. We have Karl Anthony Towns at 100-1 to win MVP. And we also have the Milwaukee Bucks, I believe, at 16-1. So we have some really good numbers here. And we'll try to work on maybe whether or not we want to hedge any of them. But right now, I'm not in a position that I really want to. If anything, I might be looking to buy a position maybe on the Houston Rockets. I think they're a team that could be a little bit sneaky in terms of what their upside is in the Western Conference. I think they're going to be a little bit underpriced based on the pedigree of those other teams coming out of the West. So those are my NBA Cup thoughts, or at least my initial gut reactions to what just happened at the end of the group stage. Now, for Pods and Recs, I'm going to recommend that you join the Ask Me Anything that I'm doing with Rhythm. We're going to do that on TikTok on Wednesday afternoon at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. Should be a pretty good time. Should be a pretty good show. Ask me whatever you want. It'll be a lot of fun. And then for a separate recommendation, I am going to recommend, I got something the other day. I got Luca, this, like, it was if you have like little kids, I guess, but like I got him like this little ball pit for Christmas. So that should be kind of cool. It wasn't as expensive as I thought it was going to be. But he seems to like it. It's soft sided everywhere. So he was at our one friend's and they had one. And he was like, I'm having the time of my life. So I was like, got to get one. So throwing that one under the tree, and he gets to open it on Christmas. And when I say he gets to open it, I mean, like, we probably help him open it. So that's my recommendation. Start your shopping now. Makes your life a lot easier. And, if you can get your wrapping done, even better. You just don't even have to worry about it later on. Avoid the stress and just be able to enjoy the rest of the holiday season. So again, episode is brought to you by Rhythm. Come to the Ask Me Anything and get a free week down here. And then we have a little bit of a special announcement during that of an extra promo that we're going to be unveiling. So that'll be really cool as well. So check it out. It's going to be on TikTok. I'll send out the details later, and let's continue to cash that.